Imagine standing in the heart of Paris on a freezing February morning in 1887. The streets are unusually crowded, not with tourists or curious visitors, but with angry Parisians. Artists, architects, writers, musicians, and some of the country's most respected intellectuals have gathered for a single purpose: to stop a construction project they believe will permanently scar the soul of their city. On the front page of France's most influential newspaper, Le Temps, 47 celebrated artists publish an open letter. Their words are fierce. They describe the proposed structure as a useless and monstrous iron tower, a gigantic black smokestack that will dominate the elegant skyline of Paris, casting its shadow over Notre Dame, the Louvre, and every monument that has defined French beauty for centuries. To them, this isn't progress. It's vandalism. The criticism doesn't stop with artists. Engineers, professors, and mathematicians publicly argue that a 300-meter iron tower is nothing more than an impossible dream. Some insist it will collapse beneath its own weight before construction is even complete. Others warn that the winds above Paris will tear it apart. For a brief moment, it genuinely seems as though they might be right. But here's the remarkable part. The monument we celebrate today was never intended to become a permanent symbol of France. By law, it was only a temporary structure. After 20 years, it was supposed to be dismantled, sold as scrap metal, and quietly disappear from history. No one imagined that this unwanted experiment would one day become the most recognizable landmark on Earth, or that it would later play a crucial role in protecting Paris during one of the darkest moments in modern history. So how did the world's most controversial construction project become one of humanity's greatest engineering triumphs? The answer begins long before the first iron beam ever touched the ground. To understand the Eiffel Tower, we first have to understand the France that dreamed it into existence. Less than 2 decades earlier, the Franco-Prussian War had left the nation deeply wounded. France had lost territory, military prestige, and much of its international confidence. The defeat wasn't merely political, it was psychological. Across Europe, many believed France's golden age had come to an end. French leaders understood that rebuilding national pride required more than speeches or military reforms. They needed a symbol powerful enough to announce that France still stood at the forefront of science, engineering, and innovation. That opportunity arrived with the Exposition Universelle of 1889, a World's Fair organized to celebrate the centennial of the French Revolution. It would be far more than an international exhibition. It would be France's declaration that the future still belonged to those willing to imagine it. The government announced an international competition for a monument unlike anything the world had ever seen. The challenge sounded almost absurd: design a tower exactly 300 meters tall. At the time, no human-made structure had ever reached such an extraordinary height. Many architects dismissed the proposal immediately, convinced it was technically impossible. Others submitted grand palaces, monumental columns, and elaborate stone structures. Then one proposal arrived that looked nothing like the rest. It wasn't a palace, it wasn't a cathedral, it wasn't carved from marble or decorated with heroic statues. It was simply an enormous lattice of iron, light, skeletal, and unlike anything anyone had ever imagined. Most people didn't admire it. They laughed. Some called it ugly. Others called it madness. Few believed it would ever rise above the drawing board. Ironically, the man whose name would become forever linked to the tower wasn't the first person to imagine it. The original concept came from 2 brilliant engineers working for Gustave Eiffel, Maurice Coquelin and Émile Nouguier. In 1884, they presented Eiffel with sketches of an immense iron pylon reaching 300 meters into the Parisian sky. His reaction was far from enthusiastic. He dismissed the design as too industrial, too plain, and lacking the elegance required for a national monument. Most people would have abandoned the idea there. Coquelin and Nouguier did the opposite. Instead of giving up, they invited the company's architect, Steven Sauvestre, to rethink the project. Sauvestre transformed the cold engineering concept into something far more graceful. He introduced elegant masonry bases, sweeping decorative arches, glass-walled pavilions, and refined architectural details that softened the tower's appearance without compromising its structural brilliance. When Eiffel saw the redesigned proposal, everything changed. He immediately recognized that this was no longer just an engineering experiment. It had become a statement, a monument capable of proving that engineering and beauty could exist together. He purchased the patent rights from his engineers, personally championed the project before government officials, and committed not only his reputation, but much of his own fortune to making the impossible a reality. But winning the competition was only the beginning. Convincing France to accept the tower would prove to be an even greater challenge. And once construction finally began, the greatest battle wouldn't be fought against public opinion. It would be fought against mathematics, wind, and the unforgiving ground beneath the River Seine. Construction officially began on January 28, 1887. The moment workers broke ground, the debate over beauty gave way to a far more serious question. Could a structure this tall actually survive? The greatest challenge wasn't the iron, it was the ground beneath it. The two western legs of the tower rested on firm, stable soil, making their foundations relatively straightforward. But the two eastern legs, closest to the River Seine, stood above soft, waterlogged sediment. If those foundations shifted by even a few millimeters, the entire tower could slowly lean, placing unimaginable stress on thousands of iron components above. Eiffel refused to leave anything to chance. Instead of digging ordinary foundations, his engineers turned to one of the most advanced construction technologies of the 19th century, compressed air caissons. These enormous, watertight steel chambers were lowered deep into the muddy ground. Powerful pumps forced compressed air inside, pushing the river water back and allowing workers to excavate the earth in conditions that would otherwise have been impossible. It was brutal work. Inside the caissons, the air felt unnaturally heavy. Temperatures climbed. The noise was relentless. Every shovel of mud brought the workers closer to stable gravel, but also exposed them to an invisible danger. Leaving the pressurized chamber too quickly could cause decompression sickness, later known as the bends, a condition capable of causing severe pain, paralysis, or even death. Yet day after day, they continued digging until the foundations finally reached solid ground. It was a victory few people ever saw, but without it, the Eiffel Tower would never have stood. With the foundations secured, another extraordinary chapter began. Most visitors imagine the Eiffel Tower rising piece by piece on the Champ de Mars. In reality, the tower had already been built long before construction even started. Not in Paris, but inside Gustave Eiffel's factory in Levallois-Perret. Every beam, every brace, every connection was carefully designed, measured, drilled, and tested before leaving the workshop. In total, more than 18,000 individual puddled iron components were manufactured with astonishing precision. The acceptable margin of error was just 1/10 of a millimeter, an extraordinary standard even by modern engineering. If a single piece failed to meet those tolerances, it wasn't adjusted on site. It was rejected, returned to the factory, and rebuilt from scratch. That precision transformed the construction site into something remarkable. Instead of thousands of workers cutting and shaping steel in the open air, only a few hundred skilled iron workers were needed. They weren't inventing the structure as they went. They were assembling an enormous mechanical puzzle whose every piece already knew exactly where it belonged. But fitting those pieces together required another masterpiece of engineering. More than 2.5 million rivets would hold the tower together. Each one began as a small cylinder of iron heated until it glowed almost white. A four-man team worked in perfect rhythm. One worker heated the rivet, another caught it with tongs and slipped it into the waiting hole. A third held it firmly in place from behind, while the fourth hammered the glowing metal until it formed a second head. As the rivet cooled, it contracted, pulling the surrounding iron plates tightly together. The hotter the rivet began, the stronger the final connection became. Millions of these tiny pieces of glowing metal gradually transformed thousands of separate components into a single living structure capable of resisting enormous forces. By the end of 1887, the 4 enormous legs had climbed to a height of 57 meters. From the streets below, they leaned toward one another like 4 giant trees reaching across the sky. Then came the moment that terrified everyone. Because of their steep angle, the legs had naturally sagged under their own weight. When engineers measured the distance between them, they discovered they no longer lined up perfectly. To critics, this looked like proof that the entire project had failed. But Eiffel had predicted this from the very beginning. Temporary wooden towers were built beneath the iron framework to support the massive girders. At their tops sat ingenious devices called sandboxes. By carefully releasing tiny amounts of sand, engineers could lower heavy sections by fractions of a millimeter with astonishing control. Even more impressive were the enormous hydraulic jacks placed beneath each leg. Operated entirely by hand, these machines allowed workers to raise, lower, and reposition thousands of tons of iron with incredible precision until all 4 legs met exactly where the calculations predicted they would. When the first platform finally locked into place, the impossible had become reality. The critics had been watching for failure. Instead, they had just witnessed one of the greatest demonstrations of engineering precision the world had ever seen. But as the tower climbed even higher, another challenge emerged. It wasn't mathematics, it wasn't iron, it was the men themselves. By early 1888, the Eiffel Tower had become impossible to ignore. Every week it climbed higher above the rooftops of Paris, and with every new meter, the danger increased. Workers balanced on narrow iron beams hundreds of feet above the ground. There were no modern safety harnesses, no hydraulic cranes, and no helicopters. Every beam had to be lifted, positioned, and secured while the wind whipped across the unfinished structure. Crowds gathered below each day, not only to witness history, but because many expected tragedy. Large construction projects of the 19th century were notoriously deadly. Bridges, railways, and factories often claimed dozens of lives. Most people believed the Eiffel Tower would be no different. But Gustave Eiffel believed engineering meant protecting people as much as building structures. Long before workplace safety became common practice, he introduced rules that many considered unnecessary. Wooden guardrails surrounded work platforms whenever possible. Protective screens reduced the danger of falling tools, while movable safety rails climbed higher as construction progressed. Perhaps most controversial of all, alcohol was completely forbidden on the site. A remarkable decision at a time when drinking during physical labor was considered normal. Those precautions saved lives. During the entire official construction period, not a single worker died while performing assigned duties. The only fatal accident associated with the project occurred on a Sunday, when construction had stopped. An Italian worker named Angelo Scagliotti returned to the site to show the tower to his fiancée. While walking across a temporary platform, he lost his footing and fell. The tragedy had nothing to do with the active construction itself, leaving Eiffel's safety record virtually unmatched for an engineering project of its time. Meanwhile, the tower continued climbing toward the cloud. To lift enormous iron sections ever higher, Eiffel designed ingenious steam-powered creeper cranes. Instead of remaining on the ground, these machines climbed the tower itself, moving upward along the very tracks that would later carry its elevators. Piece by piece, they hauled heavy iron sections into place, allowing construction to continue with remarkable speed and precision. Then, on March 31st, 1889, after just 2 years, 2 months, and 5 days of work, the impossible stood complete. 300 meters above Paris, the tallest structure humanity had ever built. Gustave Eiffel climbed all 1,710 steps to the summit and raised the French tricolor as cannon fire echoed across the city. Millions admired the tower during the World's Fair, yet few realized that the celebration hid an uncomfortable truth. The tower's future had already been decided. According to its permit, it was never meant to remain standing beyond 20 years. By the end of 1909, it was scheduled to be dismantled and sold as scrap metal. To many politicians and critics, its purpose had already been fulfilled. Eiffel refused to let that happen. Rather than defending the tower with speeches, he gave it a purpose no one could ignore. The summit became a laboratory for scientific research. Meteorological instruments recorded weather conditions at unprecedented heights. Engineers studied wind resistance. Physicists carried out atmospheric experiments. Every successful experiment gave the tower another reason to survive. But Eiffel's greatest decision came in 1903, when he financed the installation of a powerful wireless radio transmitter at the summit, using his own money. At the time, many dismissed radio communication as little more than an interesting experiment. History would soon prove them wrong. In August 1914, Europe descended into war. German armies swept through Belgium and northern France with alarming speed, advancing toward Paris. Panic spread across the capital as government officials prepared to leave the city. High above the rooftops, however, the Eiffel Tower had become something entirely different. No longer just an engineering marvel, it had become a communications weapon. Its radio station intercepted enemy transmissions across remarkable distances, giving French commanders information they could never have gathered by traditional means. During the critical weeks leading to the First Battle of the Marne, intercepted communications helped reveal weaknesses in German troop movements, allowing French forces to organize the counteroffensive that halted the advance toward Paris. Historians continue to debate the exact influence of each intercepted message, but there is broad agreement that the tower's radio capabilities became an important military asset during the war. The same antennas continued supporting French intelligence throughout the conflict. Radio intercepts contributed to several successful intelligence operations, including investigations that eventually led authorities to Mata Hari, whose espionage activities became one of the war's most famous cases. By then, nobody called it an iron monster anymore. The structure, once condemned as an eyesore, had become a symbol of scientific progress, national resilience, and human ingenuity. Today, more than 7 million people visit the Eiffel Tower every year. Most admire its beauty, some marvel at its engineering. Yet very few realize how close the world came to losing it forever. If the critics had succeeded, if the calculations had been wrong, if the foundations had shifted, or if Gustave Eiffel had never imagined a scientific future for his creation, Paris would almost certainly have a different skyline today. Perhaps that's the greatest lesson the Eiffel Tower leaves behind. History is rarely changed by people who accept the impossible. It is changed by those willing to build it anyway. The Eiffel Tower was never supposed to become the symbol of France. It earned that title. One calculation at a time, one rivet at a time, one impossible decision at a time. And more than a century later, it still stands above Paris, not simply as a monument of iron, but as proof that humanity's boldest ideas often begin as its most unpopular ones. Because history is not written only by kings or conquerors. Sometimes, history is written by the people who dare to build what everyone else calls impossible. The Eiffel Tower is far more than a monument. It is a timeless reminder that vision can outlast criticism, that courage can outlast fear, and that impossible dreams can become humanity's greatest achievements.